Welcome in everybody to the Fill in the Blanks podcast. I'm Tanitra Batiste along with Jarvis Davis, my co-host. We have an amazing panel here for you guys today, starting up top with Miss Jeanna Thomas, the new Jeanna Thomas Kelley, that is. And she's an associate director for NFL brands and a Falcons beat reporter for SBNation. Down bottom, we've got Toni Collins, anchor reporter, host extraordinaire for ESPN. We got John Michaels, national host for SBNation Radio, and we got Andy Bunker, host for the Midday Show on 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. And you might wonder, why I'm telling you who we've got on this panel. Just kind of wanted you to know, like, how we all got connected. Obviously, you got 5 of 6 of us who are in the A, but we definitely have Toni representing from up top, and also there's that Miami connection between Toni and John. So, that's one of our connections, but the other connection is really the passion. We're the kind of sportscasters and journalists who really don't kind of sit back and say, wow, that's interesting. Wow, I see what's going on out there in the world, but we're actually speaking on it and we're actually doing things about it, just in terms of the racial injustices, the inequality, and just the civil unrest that we're seeing in our society right now. So Jarvis and I thought we would bring a few of our friends along. I know we lost one of our friends for a hot second, but I don't doubt that he will come back to us soon enough and have plenty to say. So as you guys know, we were just talking about it earlier, kind of pre-show. Sports, I don't even know if I want to say it's coming back. I think it's back. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is back, but it's going to be back with a vengeance in the next few weeks here in the U.S., right? So you've got, we think probably MLS is going to come out of the gates the quickest because they have a very short training ramp-up time. They'd already started their season, if you will, and it's just a matter of them getting down to Orlando. They started full-team training yesterday, got to get down to Orlando and restart their season, and I'm sure the NBA will be right behind them as far as the season goes. So my question to you guys to kick us off is this. While that's really very exciting, things around us are still swirling at an unbelievable pace in terms of the unrest in this country. So do you guys think that excitement about live sports returning in at least 3 of the major sports in July and not far behind NFL and college football, do you think that's going to deflect attention from the country as far as addressing racism and kind of stall the momentum of the movement?
Personally don't think so. And I think part of the factor there, though, will be professional athletes continuing to speak up. I think that one of the things that we've seen about this cycle of civil unrest and protests that feels different to me is that people are pushing hard enough that change is actually happening. And I think that that momentum is something that we really can't afford to let go of. So I don't think that professional athletes, we've seen them at protests, marching, speaking out on a regular basis. I think that as long as they continue to do that, I think that it could actually help with the forward momentum.
I second that.
I think Jeanna make a great point. I think no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I second Jeanna's comment, because when you actually think about it, I think there's accountability factor too, because sports isn't going on, and you think about all of the things that's going on with Dabo Swinney and Kirk Ferentz out in Iowa. All of these coaches are being held accountable because players feel emboldened to speak, and I think that it's a perfect storm. I mean, the pandemic with all the things that have gone on, it's been tragic. I'm sure you all have been touched by it in some form or fashion. But I think that with sports not going on, you have to answer the questions. You have to respond. You can't just, hey, just move on. I was watching the Dabo Swinney video, and it just stood out to me, like how he consistently say, we apologize and then we have to move on. Or he's apologized and I talked to him and we have to move on. No. There's no moving on. You have to address it and then talk about it and find out what the person that it affected and how they feel.
Mm-hmm. And you're seeing the true colors of people having their platforms and the power that they have in these platforms right now. I think it was huge, like in the NFL video of the players demanding them to respond, that Patrick Mahomes was there, and just like he's the quarterback, black quarterback. He identifies and he put his at 24. I think athletes are seeing the power that they have and how their voice does matter. And I think, yes, we'll have sports back, but I don't think it's gonna. I think, like you said, Jeanna, it's different. It's different this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it definitely feels different. There's a lot of voices that we haven't had in the conversation before that have stepped up. We had Matt Ryan on the show earlier today, and Matt Ryan said it himself. He's sort of silently been supportive for a long time, but silently supportive isn't good enough anymore. So for Matt Ryan and people like Matt Ryan, that look like Matt Ryan, that have the platform that he has to be a part of the conversation now, has been huge. But I mean, I think we got to be honest about the fact that some people will try to use sports being back as a way to shift the conversation. The fun thing about, if anything has been fun about the last couple of weeks, is no one can tell us to stick to sports because there aren't any. Like we can literally talk about what matters right now, and obviously athletes speaking on it helps us enter into the conversation from a sports radio perspective, but there haven't been any sports. So the stick to sports people haven't really had a leg to stand on. They're going to be back in full force. Like don't, as different as it feels, there are people who are going to get tired of this conversation, and they're going to try to get us to stop talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jeanna said, we got to not bow to that. You have to keep the momentum going and keep the stamina. Like don't get tired yourself. Like we have a tendency to move from one story to the next story to the next story. This isn't a story. Like this is much more
life,
than,
man. It's real life.
It's life. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. So when sports come back, that is going to embolden the people that want to say stick to sports to start saying that again. But I think that's over with. I think that narrative and that criticism is over with.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I want to get your thoughts on that, John, as well, because it's interesting. We had a meeting at our station that Sunday, like 2 days after everything just kind of, came to an apex here in Atlanta. And there were show huddles, and each show, the question was, hey, how are you going to approach this? Each anchor, hey, how are you going to approach this? And everybody had a different approach, if you will. So, you fast forward and it's like a week later, 10 days later, almost 2 weeks later, and we are still going. The movement hasn't stopped. And interestingly enough, and I'll just be transparent, yesterday I saw something. Well, let me back up to Andy's point. I knew Matt Ryan was coming on the show either yesterday or today, and I knew that he was also going to have media availability. And I was looking on his social media to see what he was going to post, especially because low-key, the media, fans have been kind of juxtaposing Matt Ryan versus Drew Brees in what's been going on with this movement. So I saw what Matt posted on Instagram yesterday, and I said, there you have it. If anybody, whether it's our leadership that we have to kind of push and nudge forward to say, keep this conversation going to help move the movement forward, or whether we have to tell people that, it's like, those are your cosigns to remind you that it wasn't just a one-time thing when it came to an apex, a week or so ago. This continues. So John, just before we go on, or actually the perfect segue into that is this. We were talking about whether or not when sports truly returns in July and leagues start playing again, is that going to be an impetus to deflect our attention away from the movement? And we, collectively agree, no, we think that this has really got some good momentum. It feels different than anything else. But then the onus is also on us to keep it at the forefront of people's minds. So John, is that something that we need to be aware of as well when we are inundated with sports stories to tell? How do we keep the narrative going about this important story?
It's funny. I actually wrote an article for Barrett Sports Media last week, and I said, basically, it's now up to us. People are keeping score out there, whether you want to believe it or not. There are listeners, fans, sponsors, everything else that's seeing who's staying silent and who's somebody that's got, the cojones to speak up and actually talk about what's right. I know Jeanna and I have been going back and forth with a lot of people on Twitter. I've probably lost 1,500 to 2,000 followers in a week because I'm going to speak my mind. I'm not going to hold back. And I think right now, corporate radio stations need to realize this is way bigger than a third inning bunt that a guy forgot to lay down. This is way bigger than, Michael Irvin talking about Dak Prescott and the contract situation that's going there. This is our lives. Tanitra, Jarvis, I've worked with you. I mean, matter of fact, Jarvis will laugh. The first day we worked together, I said, here's my way to make it cool with Jarvis. I bought Nancy's Pizza, which is big Chicago-style pizza.
No doubt. We've
been boys ever since. Andy and I have similar type backgrounds, even though we came from different coasts. My family, my son's half black. My wife is Hispanic. You know, my other kids are half Hispanic and white. So we live in a very mixed up world and a very mixed up culture. And there'll be times that we go places and we get looks, you know, and I've already had to have the conversation. My son's 11 years old. And granted, Kane doesn't look, you know, he doesn't look African-American unless you ask him what his race is. But there's going to be a time that he gets pulled over in his driver's license when it says race, says other. And I have to have that conversation with him now. Like, you need to be careful where you go. My best friends are all black. Jarvis was at my wedding. He'll tell you there weren't a lot of white people at my wedding, and that wasn't my choice. That's just who I associate with. I don't ever want a time where my friends who I've grown up with from the time I was 15, 16 years old, I have to go attend their funeral. So this is something SBNation gives me a great platform. They don't care what we talk about as long as we're not cursing. We talk. We say whatever we want. And I probably spend 30 to 40% of my show talking about what's going on now. Now, to go to your original point about how do we navigate this when the NBA is back, college football starts, NFL starts, I think the storylines are going to write themselves. The NFL's already said, we're going to protest. And all the people that were mad 3 years ago, I'm going to boycott the NFL, see you. We don't need you. The league thrived without you anyway. College football, I guarantee you, and you've already seen kids go, well, maybe I don't want to go to this school or that school. Yeah. I might go to an HBCU. I might go somewhere else for the first time in 50 or 60 years. So I think the story's going to write themselves. But as journalists, and I use that loosely, but as people that entertain in the sports industry, it is our responsibility to not let this get swept under the rug.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think I am very encouraged by what I'm hearing from you guys, just in terms of how we see this, what our vision is for going forward, how we think things are going to continue to play out and evolve. So what's been the most encouraging thing for you in terms of where we are now? But also, what's frustrated you about how we got here, you know, where we are right now, and what will you, or, you know, what do we have to do about that? Like, what are we going to actually do about it? So again, what's encouraging you and motivating you about where we are? What's frustrating you about why the hell we're here yet again? And what is it that, you know, you want to see done or you want to do to make it better?
I mean, I would probably start off by saying that I think it's cool. I go back to that college football piece, because when you think about the type of power that college football coaches have in their respective towns, it is amazing. These guys are politicians behind the scenes. They have power to wield power, and they hold these guys' future in their hands when they're talking about making that jump from the college football level to the NFL. And I've just been so encouraged by these guys stepping up and saying something. Not only the guys that have gone through college football, that played at Iowa or that played at Clemson, but the guys that are still there. They're opening their mouths and they're feeling emboldened to say something, to hold these coaches accountable. Because when these guys are fostering cultures of making it okay to joke about you being from the ghetto, or I'm gonna send you back to the streets, or if you don't act right, or you don't cut your hair, I'm not gonna give you a stamp of approval to go to the NFL. So I think that I am very proud of this generation. I know this generation gets a lot of flack, but I am so proud of these guys for stepping up and opening their mouths and saying, you know what? I'm not worried about consequences or retaliation. I am going to speak my mind and put it out there, because there are guys who are going through the same exact thing, and hopefully those guys will continue to speak up too.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm encouraged about is that as these protests have been sustained, we've seen different municipalities around the country start to talk about diverting funds away from police departments and into community service that would, you know, avoid the need for policing in the first place. So meeting the core needs of the community that cause people to commit crimes. And so that's I think that's the thing that I'm most encouraged about, because no matter what, we've had this conversation, you know, year after year after year, and the state-sanctioned violence against Black Americans goes back to 400 years ago. I mean, this is something that has been, it's been a perpetual part of Black existence in America. The only way to change that is to make substantive change with policing. And that doesn't mean reform, because reform has been insufficient. We've seen reform fail in the past. So I'm really encouraged that we're seeing actual movement toward change. And that's why I really want to see this momentum continue with the protests and continuing to put pressure on municipalities to divert those funds into things that make more sense.
I'm going to piggyback off that because it's, at ESPN, we've been told to stay quiet or stay in our lane in that sense since the whole Jamel Hill, and this time around they're not. And to see that change from corporate not telling us, hey, you can't tweet, you can't do anything, and then within our SportsCenter morning show group, we had a call about diversity, and Elle Duncan was so emotional, and just hearing her pain, and you work with her every day, and you know what? It angers me that we didn't realize, even as a minority, I didn't realize the pain that Elle or Michael Leaves or all these people had to do with some. I'm sorry for my English, but like sometimes the racial undertones that we might have that would go by with people that wouldn't even realize at work, And just to see that my co-anchor, David Lloyd, white male, he's like, Toni, I did not know I was part of this white privilege, but I'm 50 something and I'm going to my first protest this weekend. And we talked about, I know and he's like, I get so emotional because he's like, I'm 50. He said it in the call. He's like, I'm 50 something, but I feel like shit. I'm sorry, I poop. And I want to do something. When we talked about it afterwards, and he's like, you just see the pain, the passion. And then it was hopeful to see white families there with black families supporting them and having the next, the little kids with signs and just showing them what this is about. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience in terms of seeing people that I guess in the past wouldn't have or haven't thought about what's going on or haven't had to think about what's going on, actually thinking about it and talking about it. And again, I've been thinking a lot about why now, what is it about this moment that has made people do that? And I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons for it. Whatever it is, it's good. People are actually starting to open their minds up a little bit and listen. It is a little frustrating at times. The Drew Brees thing was a perfect example of it. It's you have to have these same conversations over and over and over again. It's damn, I thought we did this 4 years ago. Right. All right, we'll do it again.
Right.
Okay.
But that's okay though. And especially for me, okay, I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time. I've been having these conversations for a long time. Not everybody has, and they probably should have been, it's right there for you. If you wanted to learn about it, you could have 4 years ago, 10 years ago, however long ago. But for whatever reason, people are interested in doing it now. Randy and I had a conversation off the air last week about how, for whatever reason, our show has gotten a lot less pushback from listeners, social media wise, whatever, the text line, all that. And I don't know, anybody that follows Hugh Douglas on Twitter sees some of the garbage that he has to deal with on there. Randy doesn't get a lot of that. I get almost none of that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that he and I together talk about it, and the way that I listen to him and he listens to me, and we try to keep an open dialogue. I don't know. Yeah. When we were at night, me and Jarvis did the same thing. We would have these conversations all the time, but what I got to realize is not everybody's been doing that. So, if you can have a conversation with somebody about it, who it's something that, all right, man, where you been? We're past this. This was 4 semesters ago. You're in the remedial class now. But that's okay. The fact that they want to catch up is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on what everybody's saying, the encouraging part is somebody like Roger Goodell actually goes, oh, crap. We fucked up 3 years ago and made Colin Kaepernick stand up. And let's be honest, we blackballed him from the league. Colin Kaepernick is better than 70% of the garbage that's playing in the NFL right now. And I know, traveling, I've seen backup quarterbacks good Lord, how is this guy in the league and Colin Kaepernick's not playing? The problem was the conversation the first time, to Andy's point, nobody wanted to listen. And I think back when Rick and I were doing middays, we did get a lot of pushback because it was 4 white guys doing the show. Although, anybody that really knew me kind of knew the culture that I came from. They knew I attended an HBCU. But still, when you see 4 white guys talking about Colin Kaepernick, the pushback was never, it was basically, you guys should shut up and go back to talking about the Atlanta Falcons. And it always used to piss me off. I always would walk into Sean or Terry's office, more so Sean than Terry, But I would walk in there and it would be, you know, we need to talk about this stuff. Ignoring it makes us look like candy asses. So the thing now, at least you're seeing an open dialogue. Roger Goodell knows it's going to be different this year. You know, Arthur Blank probably knows my Falcons are going to have 50 players, maybe all 53 taking a knee during the national anthem. And instead of Roger Goodell trying to deflect it and saying, hey, we're going to keep them in the locker room or we're not going to play the national anthem, he's standing up and applauding it. But to answer your second part, and this is what has got me angry more than anything, as far as what's frustrated me through all of this, there's so many people around the country that refuse to shut the hell up and listen. And actually listen to what's going on. You may not have to agree. Politically, I don't know where any of you are. I don't care. Politics, I don't give one crap about. Whoever you vote for, you vote for. That's your business. But why is every time we're having a conversation about a man being brutally murdered by a police officer, does it turn into, you're disrespecting the flag, all lives matter? It turns into something else instead of listening what the root cause of all of this is. One of my best friends, a guy named Raja, and I'll put his name out there. He's got a 13-year-old son. He's a very successful, he's been a corporate recruiter. His wife works high level in one of the counties up outside of Atlanta as a high level educator. So they're a very successful family. He's petrified as a 50-year-old, almost 50-year-old man to take his 13-year-old son anywhere. And it's like, why? You live in Roswell. You live in a very nice house. You know, you live in a great neighborhood. Why are you afraid? And even as his friend, there were times in the past that I'd look and go, are you exaggerating a little bit? And he'd be like, dude, you have no idea. I'm a black man from Liberty City in Miami, Florida, that lives in Atlanta. He goes, it doesn't matter if I have $10 million in the bank or I have $10 in the bank. I'm still seen as a black man before anything else. And what pisses me off with so many people, and social media brings out the worst in everybody, is instead of listening to what's going on, it's everybody trying to take that jab, everybody trying to take that dig. Oh, you didn't vote for this guy. No, what I care about is I don't want to see my brothers dead in the middle of the street for no reason. I don't want that to be my son. I don't want that to be Jarvis's children. I don't want that to me, Tanitra, to be your children. I don't want that to happen to everybody. And it's like, how hard is that to get through somebody's head that this is wrong? Or immediately when, okay, there's been 9, 10, 15 unarmed black men killed by cops this year. Well, in Chicago this weekend, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up and listen. It's not about Chicago. Guess what? There are white people that kill white people. We've had white people walk into elementary schools and shoot up the school and walk out in handcuffs. We had a white kid walk into a church in South Carolina and shoot up the church, and they took him to Burger King. How does that not piss everybody off? How does everybody not see the hypocrisy in that? That angers me more than anything.
I think what we have to understand, John, you know, just and based off what you were saying is that this is not a politics thing. It has nothing to do with politics. We're talking about human rights, dude. You know, when you think about that, you know, black people were considered less than a whole person back in the day. Like, you got to think about where we come from. We got to think about the origin where all of this stuff comes from redlining to not even being able to live in Roswell, John. Like there are certain areas in the metro area that I wouldn't live today, and I'm 37 years old. I would not live in Forsyth. You know, that would never be a place of my residence. You know what I'm saying? So it's just all of those things that have been ingrained in us. We got to continue to just chop those things down and get rid of them. And I think that right now is the listening piece is definitely a part of it. And not only listening, digest it, and then doing something about it. And I think we can start in our industry as well, you know, from a diversity standpoint. You know, I think that sports radio is missing the mark on that. I think that the fact that Andy and Randy are able to have those conversations, they're balanced. They're balanced because they're both sides. Even a white listener might feel like Andy feels, but he might be able to understand where Randy is coming from too, because he grew up around black people. Because that makes a difference too. So sure. I think all of those things coming together is being put into this pot. Like you said, like I mentioned earlier, with the pandemic and no sports being live, I think we have time to have conversations because people are at home now. People are working from home. They're around their families more. So I think that conversation piece is a big part of it. And like I said, anybody who's affected by it and had lost some people, I truly, my prayers goes out to you. But I think that within that, I'm a positive person. I always try to find a positive outlook on things, and to be able to see what has happened and what has come out of this, and I think it's going to continue. I'm truly encouraged, and I think the fact that it's cool to speak out. I think we're in a good place, and I think we need to continue this momentum and keep moving forward.
Jarvis, I want to go to a piece that you just mentioned for a second about sports radio and inclusion. And Toni, I actually know Elle. Tell Elle I said hello. She started as an intern at an old station I used to work at, so I was really good friends with Elle when she lived here in Atlanta. But to go to Jarvis's point about sports radio and diversity, why does all the black people that are on sports radio have to be former athletes? I didn't play in the NFL. I didn't play in Major League Baseball. I played college, played at a small HBCU. But guess what? It was wildly accepted that I knew football because I covered the Falcons for so long. Why does it have to – and this isn't to knock Randy or Hugh or, anybody else. Channing Crowder, I was just on their show down in Miami a little while ago. It doesn't knock any of them. But why can't Jarvis get a job? Why does Jarvis have to toil for 8, 9, 10 years to get to an on-air hosting role? Why are those walls being built? Same thing for women in sports as well. Why is it, she has to have a pretty face? No, it doesn't matter. If you know the game and you can cover the game and you can talk eloquently about it, why aren't you able to be given that job? That's, to me, because it's almost like sports radio has the Rooney Rule. Oh, you're a former athlete, we'll put you on the air. That's great. And we can pat ourselves on the back and say that we have a black host. How about you cultivate some of the young black men that come through? Jahi's been working there forever. CCV's been working there forever. Why aren't those guys being given real opportunities to have jobs instead of having to run the board? And it's not against running the board, but why are you only running the board and producing and you get to come on air at 2 o'clock in the morning? That's the BS that needs to stop before our own industry can even start to take step forward.
Yeah, and I would agree. We talk about, and we were kind of talking about this earlier, it's not just about what's going to go on in terms of the athletes and what envelope they're pushing, but there are envelopes that need to be pushed everywhere, because remember, you got to have people like us who aren't afraid to tackle any of the narratives in order for the narrative to continue to evolve and for it not to be pushed back to either the last segment of a show or not to be mentioned at all. So yeah, it goes above and beyond just who's in the story and what the story is, but who's telling it, Right. And I think about something that I saw, and I thought about you, Toni, thought about you, John, because, obviously, yes, Black Lives Matter, because that's the most critical piece there, just because of the rate at which we are losing our Black men in particular, but women as well, left and right. That's the conversation. But I also think that we've got to be honest about the fact that brown lives are under siege too. Antonio, Venezuela, life would not have nobody would have even blinked except for a video that was finally found of the police officer who in New Mexico ended his life in virtually the same way that George Floyd's life was ended. So, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you guys as well, whether it's Toni, you in your individual space, especially because you mentioned that poignant conversation that the morning show huddle took on a couple days ago. And then John, you're talking about, your wife and your kids as well. What have been some of the difficult conversations you guys have had to have with people about racial discrimination and equality? I know what Jarvis and I have had to have, just from the Black perspective, but just, thinking about it from our brown brothers and sisters as well. What are some of, the frustrations been like, or the conversations been like?
I mean, at ESPN, I'm trying to think, it's just are you the token Mexican? Are you the Hispanic because we have the voice and you pronounce in Spanish, your accent, you know what I mean? It's those conversations. And I remember the point where they were like, no, pronounce it the right way. I'm like, what do you mean pronounce it the right way? His name is Jesse Tweet, and I'm going to say how, you know what I mean? Those were the tough conversations when I first got there. Not anymore. Now they're like, BU. Now it's the whole BU. But I don't know, John, if within our own Latin community that it's been tough to talk to the older generation, the baby boomers, because they're like, what about us? We go through the discrimination as well. I mean, it's not about us right now. This is about what's been happening, that we need to unite with our Black brothers and sisters and be there for them, because you know what? One day we're going to need them, because we're all being oppressed at some point, and they're going to be there right with us. So that's been the toughest, to change the older people within
Yeah.
our own Hispanic race. Because my cousin, I'm so proud, 18, goes to UCLA, and she is all about the movement and the change. But talk to my older aunts and uncles, and it's like hitting a brick wall, and they make it about themselves. So that has been a challenge for me, more talking to my culture, or it's not about you guys. It's not about, I don't know if you can help me, John, but it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife is very open to everything that's going on. She, there's a reason I married her. Not that she's beautiful. She's, we share a lot of the same spirit as well. So she understands, and our friendship with the people that we're friends with, it's a lot of different race. Her family, will openly talk about it. Her sisters are all around the same age. But I think you're right with the older culture. Because I think about growing up in South Florida. The Cuban community in Florida lives in Little Havana. It's one little pocket of Miami. That's where they live. That's where the older generations, a lot of people that came over from Cuba back in the 1980s, and they're very set in their ways. Unfortunately, they were used to being raised under the Castro regime. They left. They almost feel like, all right, we've made it to America. So we're going to kind of just stay here and abstain from really having the conversation. I guess the best thing, my kids haven't had to deal with anything as of yet, but me as a father, I have to educate. And, I've had to tell my daughter, you're Hispanic. You're from your mother and your father are both Nicaraguan. I took her in as my own, and I tell her, I said, there's going to be days you're going to be looked at as the Spanish girl. Her middle school was the first time she had really been around a lot of people of different cultures. And she was nervous about that. And I told her, just be yourself. Let your true personality shine through. And the people that are going to like you are going to like you anyway. Are younger, I tell them, and I just say, look, you have to be careful in the situations you put yourself in, because there are parts in this state outside of this little perimeter. And Atlanta's fine. Atlanta's very diverse. Looks like a great place. Go about 30 minutes north of where I live, past
It's like,
you start getting up there,
Man.
all of a sudden you got to be nervous. And I tell them, I said, look, when we're driving to New Orleans tonight, we're leaving in a couple hours, Tanitra. So we have to drive through Alabama. We drive through Mississippi.
That's why I said be safe.
I stop for gas. I don't have to stop for gas again until Mobile. Mobile's at least city enough. I don't stop in any of those small towns because I don't want any of that harassment. So I've had that conversation with them. But Toni, to your point, I know, my wife gets it because she's got a very heavy accent, and they'll be like, oh, pronounce it this way. And she's like, I only know how to talk the way I know how to talk. And unfortunately, that's a stereotype that needs to go away.
Like, what are you? I'm like, what do you mean, what am I?
I'm a human.
So I'm like,
I'm a human.
So yeah, we still, but not like, lately, no, but it's part of it. And you're just grateful to be in this country, so you accept it and you move on, and it's like, no. And one thing that Jay Harris, one of my co-anchors, told me, because I was very confused and at a loss of like anything, and he's like, your voice is power. You don't think your voice is power? Your voice is power. Use it. You see something, you say something, like, you know what I mean? It's the most simple thing that you didn't realize you have, but now it's like, okay, I do have that power. So.
Oh yeah.
One of the interesting things that I've observed, not just in the last couple of weeks, but in the last, 5 years or so, as my younger brothers have gotten older, about white privilege, is that even if you're around people of color, like my two younger brothers are both mixed race, they're both half black. And so my mom has lived in the house with, my mom's white, their dad is black, and my mom's lived in the house with them their whole lives. But until you start to listen and actually have conversations about, how your experience as a person of color is different in certain circumstances than the experience of a white person, and actually think about it, you don't really have to. Like, and that's what's been really unique about these last 5 years is, man, my mom's a wonderful lady, but she had never thought about this stuff before. She didn't grow up as a mixed race person. She never had those experiences. She was a white lady in a small town, and all of a sudden she's got two young black boys in this time where, all of these conversations are happening. And at first she didn't want to hear it. I remember a couple different times vividly where my younger brother Ryan would bring up a point and she would say, well, that's not why it happened. This is why it happened, or this is what, and we had to be like, look, this is a an uncle or an aunt or a cousin that treats me this way, that treats Ryan this way. Why? Why is that? Like, what is, there's only one difference. Like we're pretty much the exact same in almost every other way. And so slowly but surely, you know, because people feel attacked by that for whatever reason, that when you have those conversations with a lot of white people that haven't had those conversations before, they feel like it's a personal attack, and it isn't. It's not. I'm not telling you you're a bad person. I'm telling you this is my experience and this is what's happening. So it's been interesting to gradually see her, okay, start to listen. Oh, okay, really pay attention. Oh, wow. Okay, now really kind of grasp it a little bit. And, you know, it's because people always like to talk about, and I think it is incredibly valuable to be around a diverse set of people growing up and to have different experiences and all that. But that's one of the many interesting parts about being white is if you don't want to learn about it, you don't have to. You just sit over here and be comfortable and white, and no one's really going to ever push you on it.
You know, Andy, I've had people on social media, and I've seen Jeanna have the same thing. I've had people try to tell me legitimately in the last 2 weeks, 99% of this country is not racist. And I looked at them and I said, where are you living? Like, where are you living where you honestly believe?
Can I move there?
Let me take my glasses off and check these stats.
I want to live there.
I had another guy tell me point blank, he goes, in the last 5 years, things are better in this country. And the stories, because he tried to tell me, he goes, you don't know what it's like, this, that, and the other. And I said, do you understand, where I went to college, I was the only white person for 4 years. It was me. That's it. When we would travel, and I played basketball and baseball in college, we would travel, there'd be times police would be called to our hotels because my teammates were black. And you know who got questioned? Andy, it's simple. They'd pull me out. Are you okay, fine son? Is everything okay? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Who are these guys and are they harassing you? I'm like, those are my teammates. We have a game at noon tomorrow. Yeah. Like, that's my first baseman. That's one of my best friends in the world.
My friends.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people, you know, I go to clubs where I'm the only white person. I don't care. I find it more, for me, I find I'm more comfortable going to a black club. I find because that's what I'm used to. But people, to Andy's point, white people that don't want to hear it just have their ears closed and go, la, 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 it's not happening. And I go, how do you really believe this, whether you're in the cornfields of Iowa or you're somewhere in South Atlanta, that racism doesn't exist? And Jeanna, I've seen you, like, we've known each other through work, but I've never really got to talk to you outside of Falcons. I've got so much more respect for you because you have stood up, basically told everybody, here's what you get. If you don't like it, get off my page. What gives you the strength to do that and fight?
Yeah, that was my question too, Jeanna. I was thinking, like, okay, and I know Jarvis, are you good on time? Because I know he's got a show to do. And I know we told you guys 30 minutes.
I got about 10. I got about a good solid 10.
If you guys can hang tight for a few more minutes, because I'm thinking to myself, so Toni, these guys are family, right? So I'm gonna make a family comment here and say, okay, woke white folks. And that is a compliment, and they know it, and I would only say that to family. But legitimately, John's absolutely right. People come for Jeanna like it's nobody's business. And I truly believe half of it is because she is outspoken as a white woman, a white person. But I also believe it's a little bit of that female thing too, Jeanna. Let's just be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, because they were coming for her before all of the civil unrest as well. Just to, you know, Toni, just kind of give you some backstory in terms of her being one of our best Falcons beat writers, and yet always questioned about that particular piece. So that goes back to what we were saying earlier about what we have to do in pushing the envelope of who tells the story. But yeah, absolutely, Jeanna, Andy, John, you know, you guys, and even you, Toni, I'm sure you get it from time to time because people are making assumptions based on appearance of, oh, well, you know, that's a white person. But how do you guys, I think John made a great statement, in our society where we've become very comfortable in our space of, you know, whatever we've carved out, how do you guys have the strength and just the courage and the boldness to just keep this narrative going unapologetically?
For me, I think it's partly because I'm a mother. I have teenage daughters, and I never had to set them down and tell them how to avoid getting shot during a routine traffic stop. And that is something that it breaks my heart to think of these mothers and these other family members. I'm going to get emotional talking about it, but I think that that's really the driving factor behind it. I was lucky to be raised by parents who are, pretty liberal minded, very open minded. I never heard the N-word once growing up. I didn't associate with people who used it. And so, that seems like something that should be pretty standard. And I thought that it was in most white people's lives. I was shocked to find out that wasn't true. But even my parents have blind spots. And so I think for me, that's been a good lesson for me. For example, for the last 5 or so years, my mom is 72. I've been having this conversation with her about how you can't not see color. We don't have that luxury. You have to see color because you have to respect that the Black and brown experience in the United States is extremely different from our experience as white people. And so I think that, knowing that my mom means well, knowing that she, truly isn't racist, but still holds on to a little bit of that bigotry, like she doesn't want to confront institutional and systemic racism. So she's like, I don't see color, it doesn't apply to me. And I think that has also been a really good lesson for me, just in being mindful of not just my privilege, but also my blind spots. They exist. Because I'm a white woman, I can't know everything about what the Black experience is like in America. And so that's why I think that it's really important. And what I always recommend for white people is listen to Black people and believe their experiences.
I like the last piece that you said. Listen to them and believe them. Because like I go back to the Kirk Ferentz situation where people are just saying those guys are lying, they're just bitter, you're just mad because you didn't make it to the NFL, and then blah 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 blah. It's like just a little thing. It's just a little thing. It's little. I call them triggers, like little triggers, like that whole going back to the ghetto. Like there is no such thing as a Black person that grows up in a 2-parent household, comes from a middle-class family. Like, and even the NFL is so guilty of it, especially when it comes to not to throw any shade, Tony, but ESPN, where they put those little stories out and just like
what tragedy happened to him?
Yeah, like his son and his dad and his mom was murdered, and he grew up and he came through, and I'm like, oh my God, like stop inundating me with all of this negative stuff, because when you have white people who aren't used to being around Black people, that's what they see. The picture. That's why that's why it's so important for people to that diversity piece to be behind the microphones, in front of the camera, because it's all about perspective and what you put out there. Because I'm going to talk about a story much differently than Andy's going to talk about a story, because Andy is looking at it from his perspective. I'm looking at it from mine, and it's cool to be different. It's okay for it to be different, and that's when you have those in-depth conversations. And when you would, Jeanna, I just want to add to what you were talking about as far as when you're talking and having a conversation with your daughters. I was just talking to my brother over the weekend, and I didn't really realize until I got to probably about outside of college and graduated. And now that I look back, my father used to literally stay up until my brother and I came home. We used to go out and stuff like that. He always used to give a little speech. Don't be riding around with all 4 deep in the car, both hands on the steering wheel. When the officer pulled over, don't make any sudden movements, all that stuff. And I used to always wonder why when I used to get home, my brother and I used to get home, he'll just go upstairs. He'll be asleep right there in the couch, And now that I look back, and I was like, that's
now
right.
you know.
Now I know. Like, he was waiting. He wanted that peace of mind.
He needed to know you were home.
Right, exactly. And I think that now that peace of mind is talking about it, putting it out there for everybody to see and for everybody to converse about. And like I said, I'm excited about it. I'm totally excited about it.
I think about it as a I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Tanitra asked about why, and I know, Andy, you'll speak on this as well, why I'm so steadfast, and speaking out about this. And I'm not, it wasn't, hey, I'm going to put the black square up and I'm good. Like, this is my life. This is life experiences that I've dealt with. This is family to me. My best friends, Carnell, Jamal, and Rashawn, those are family. to me. Like, I'll take a bullet for any one of them right now. I would be the one on the ground dead before I let any one of them die. I'm not going to let this just go by the wayside. I do have a voice. I'm lucky enough that I was able to cover sports in this town for 16 years. God willing, one of these two stations will hire me before too long, and I'll be back covering locally as well as nationally. That's something that can't be given up just by, hey, I put a black square up. Right. I don't give a damn if I go down to 2 followers. I'd rather my 2 followers follow me because they believe what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm not a guy that's a hypocrite. I'm not going to speak one thing behind closed doors and then out in front of the public be a certain way. And I think that's something in our industry that gets lost. There's too many people worried about their stupid ass brand. And this is why Jake Fromm and Drew Brees, apologize all you want. It's candy ass to do something today and turn around tomorrow and say you learn. What you say up front, what you say first is what you really believe. When the backlash comes, if you back down and you go, oh, I'm not going to do this, then you're a coward. I'm not a coward. I know Jeanna's not a coward. I know Andy's not a coward. I know Tanitra's not, and I know Jarvis is not. Toni, I don't know you that well, but I can tell from being on here, you're not as well either. We're not afraid to speak up, and I think the great thing about this movement, it's getting bigger. Yeah. The narrative a week ago by the media was the looters, the looters, the looters, and this is terrible. And guess what? The outpouring this week was double what it was last week. Yeah. And next week, it's probably going to be double that. And all the people that want to hate, we're going to keep putting videos out of you looking like a jackass, screaming all lives matter, trying to start fights with people. You're going to lose. We're going to stomp this bullshit out once and for all.
Yeah, I 100% agree, John. There's a lot of different reasons for me, motivators. But one of them is that we're not wrong, right? Like, the history is going to prove us right, like it has over and over again.
Time and time again.
The same conversations we were having about Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago, knowing we were right. And now it's like Roger Goodell's like, oh, we made a mistake. Yeah, duh, we knew that. We were trying to tell you that 4 years ago, jackass. So it's the same thing now. It's just you keep going with it. Now, I think about it from a couple of other different ways as well. I mean, I would like to hope that I would feel the way that I feel and behave the way that I behaved, no matter where I came from or who I was raised with or whatever. But I don't know, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But I do know what my family is. And I know that I would be a huge disappointment to my brothers if I got on the radio and used this platform any differently than the way that I do. They would, like John said, they would call me a coward. Like, oh, cool. So you're just going to go be white and like enjoy that?
Right.
Maybe try to make a difference. The other thing is, and John and Jeanna can probably speak to this. I know I can. We have access to a different set and a different conversation at times. You'd be shocked to hear the things that people that don't know me at all, that, you know, maybe have a beer with me or play a hole or two of golf with me, will get comfortable enough to say like that. And it's like, damn, that was really racist. Like, you thought just because I look how I look, and I mean, I'm about as white as they come. But you look at me and it's like, all right, I'm with an ally now. We can start talking about whatever. And it's like, wow, holy crap. But because of the, I guess, costume that I have on, or like the, you know, the disguise that I have on into that world, I got an obligation to call it out. You know, I can't be sitting there, you know, at the country club and allow that to go on just because I like being there. You know what I mean? And that is really awkward sometimes. It's really awkward for other people to be like, oh, don't say that shit around me, man. That's not, you know, you can't, that's not cool with me. And then the harder part, and the part that I'm trying to get better at, is in those moments trying to have a conversation to say, all right, so where can we go from here? And that's, people don't want to do that a lot, but that's a part of it too, because, you know, we all come at this from different angles. You know, I've got access to a privilege and to a part of this conversation that not everybody does. And you know, it would be cowardly not to use that.
And that's a perfect way for us to wrap up. I'm going to say this, and then I want to hear from you guys as we close. But yeah, Andy, when I think about what it is that I need to do, one of the first answers, and not to say this is the number one thing, but it darn sure is the first thing that comes up, is I lived a lot of my life being the one Black person in the room, the one acceptable one, the one well-spoken one, the one, you all know what I'm talking about. And so I used to be very outspoken, and I would always get in trouble because they'd be like, wow, you know, we thought you were like, really like, and I was, and for, you know, for years, I was like, what the hell do I keep getting in trouble just because I raised my hand and said, you know, something about something being inappropriate and incorrect and unjustified, but just like before I said anything, I was like the it girl. And I finally figured it out because I was the token, like Toni mentioned earlier, and it was assumed, oh wow, because of the look, because of the way I speak, the way I carry myself, that wow, we can say whatever, do whatever, because Tenitra is just going to kind of fall in line and be lockstep. So when I think about the answer to my own question I'm about to pose to you guys, one of the things I need to do where I go from here is to go back to being more of me. And you're probably not going to like it. It's probably going to make a lot of people go, wow, we really thought she was so nice, Tenitra. But I can't be nice to Tenitra anymore because that's not going to advance the cause for anything or anybody. So that's my charge to myself, to reclaim that aspect of my voice so that I can help to advance the cause of others. And I'm going to leave that with you guys as we wrap up. What's maybe that one thing, and some of you guys have touched on it, but if you want to go back to it quickly, what's that one thing that you know you need to do to say, hey, I need to make sure that I know this is what I'm going to do as far as where we go from here?
I think that one of the most important things, especially for white people right now, is to don't just talk about it. You've got to be about it. So what I'm working on right now is I've been calling Cobb County law enforcement and emailing them, working very hard to get Cobb County law enforcement, all branches, to establish citizen review boards for officer-involved shootings. I think that that is something that everybody should be working toward on a local basis. I think that it just creates a level of accountability for police that we do not see right now. And I think it's a very practical first step. Yes. And so I think that that's one of the most important things right now is I think that, you know, not staying silent is very important, but you've got to have action to back up those words. And so that's something that personally, that's my goal. And that's something that I encourage everybody else to think about too.
Completely agree. An apology without change is simple manipulation, and we have to change. All of us have something to change, right, and to improve. So like for me would be not being afraid of using my power, my voice, because I don't think I matter or it will make a difference. No, it makes a damn difference. So definitely using that voice and owning it and being, because we have to fight the good fight. We do. We have that power. I don't want to be my parents' generation and be like that close-minded, ignorant. I'm so sorry. I'm just so angry at some people. But I want to be that generation that be like, okay, they supported us. They helped the change. You know, I want to be part of that. So definitely using the voice and action.
Yes.
I think for me is kind of getting out of my own way to be able to say something, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I have no problem saying sometimes, but I've been trained and ingrained to being a big black man, being a big burly guy, being the guy that say, if you walk into a courtroom, you're going to automatically guilty, you know, having to deal with that. And I think now is just a time to continue to speak out and know that my voice matters. Like, people understand where I'm coming from. There are some people who understand, there are some people who don't. And I just got to make sure that they continue to understand that. And I think it's just a matter of getting involved in the community somehow, in some way, touching young men's lives who look like me, whether that be coaching or just being a mentor to guys, a guy of just being an ear, lending my ear to a guy that looks like me, a young man who's about to go through the same things that I'm going through as a college athlete. You know, I've been trying to reach out to him. So I think it starts where you are. I think it's just about starting where you are, and that's kind of where I am. I'm starting where I am and reaching and touching the people that are close to me and trying to make a difference that way.
Andy, John, you guys want to?
I was going to let John go.
I know you already talked,
okay.
so.
No, I have no problem. Everything that was just said, and I like Jarvis giving back to the younger community. I'm actually talking with a guy up here about coaching some 8th graders just to be around them. You know, it has not, I love sports, one, that's always part of it, but being able to teach them different than just, hey, we listen to this kind of music, hey, we wear these kind of shoes. I think the problem, the stereotypes exist so much, and it's a lot about educating the younger people. I put a post out that a lot of people got mad about, and again, I don't give a damn. Unfollow me. If you want to follow me, follow me. I don't care. It really doesn't make a difference. But my point was racism, you're not born with it. Jarvis, your daughter, she's not born to hate anybody. She's born to, all right, I'm at the playground, and whoever wants to play, I'm going to play with. You know, I think about my son. My youngest is 11. Our neighbors on both sides are African-American. His other best friend is a young Asian kid. Out front of my house on the basketball goal, it's 3 black kids, 2 white kids, a couple of Asian kids, and everybody plays and nobody thinks about it. And they're in their 11 or 12-year-old. So part of it for me is educating other people, and something that none of us have talked about. The one voice that we could use, we have to vote. We have to. If we're able to run out and stand in line, and I use we because I've done this before, we're able to run out and stand in line to buy new Jordans or buy new Air Maxes, we can go stand in line. I don't give a damn if Cobb County or Fulton County or wherever the county voting machine goes down. Stay there until it goes back up. Yeah. Your vote does matter. And I think people, it becomes faux pas. Diddy had Rock the Vote, and everybody wore the T-shirt, and it looked really cool. But if you're not out there actually doing something about it, we get stuck with people in office who will continue to allow oppression to happen. We continue to have people in office that are going to fester racism, and they're going to protect the KKK, and they're going to protect all these other racist organizations, and they're going to act like it doesn't happen. You have to go out and vote. So for me, one, and I vote anyway, but to make sure I vote in everything. 2, give back to the community. And Jarvis, I'm with you. You ever want to set something up where we, you know, and I'm sure everybody here would be in part of it, where we can go out and have a rally somewhere or have a meeting or get in front of because again, we have the voices to get in front of the mayor. We have the voices to get in front of the governor. We need to use those voices and get in front of the people that can actually make these decisions.
Yeah, I echo that. I would love to be a part of something with you guys. I mean, this has been great. This has been a great hour, and hopefully people will watch it and listen, and maybe we touch a couple people, but I'd love to get out there with you guys. I think with the platforms and the audiences, whether social media or otherwise, that we already have built in, it'd be a great place to start. I've also heard 3 of you guys already talk about this, and for me, the thing that I'm probably most focused on right now is becoming a dad. I'm going to be a dad in August. I think the most important thing I can do in life is to raise her to be good. And I think a lot of this conversation is a part of that. You know, we can do as much as we possibly can with the older generation. And I think maybe sometimes you reach them, sometimes you don't, whatever, you try. But my daughter can't be a racist. Like that would be a huge failure. So I've got to do that, and then have a couple other ones too. And we'll get working on that as soon as she gets here. But repopulate the earth with good people. That's what we got to do. But that's what I'm focused on, because that's my next big endeavor starting in August. So.
Yes, and we are all waiting with bated breath for the arrival of Baby Bunker. So, Jeanna, Toni, Andy, John, can you guys give your Twitter handles, because you are all fantastic follows?
It's at Jeanna Thomas.
Man, mine's hard. It's it's my name. It's Antonieta ESPN, but yeah, sorry.
Mine's pretty simple. At John Michaels U, and you know what the U stands for.
We do.
I'm still using the Twitter handle me and Jarvis created a couple of years ago. I'm at TBM929.
Do your research.
Yeah, I know, right? Do your research. Jarvis, give us your handle, and is there anything you want to share before we wrap up?
I'm at Jarvis D90. Like I said, let's continue this. Continue this conversation with action, people. Let's do it. I'm ready.
Let's get it. I'm at Tenitra Batiste, and on behalf of Jarvis and I, man, we cannot thank you guys enough for this, just joining us today to have this conversation about how we are going to move the movement forward. So on behalf of the Fill in the Blanks family, I hope this is you guys' first time joining us. Hopefully it will not be the last. And yes, let's go out in these streets and make a difference. So everybody be safe, go vote, and until next time.